What
All
can go
right.
wrong?
All right. Good evening, everybody. I know I said we were going to go live, usually get to 3, 2, 1 minute, but tonight I'm running the show, so we're going to get through it real quick here. So good evening. I want to welcome everybody to the Talk of Southwest Florida. As you can see, I am Kim Ryan, not Ed. He had a previous engagement in the Cape. So tonight you get the AB team, meaning Dan is the A team and I'm going to be the B team.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Tonight we're expecting a lively discussion as we welcome Cindy Banyai, and I'm going to try and let her pronounce that herself. Cindy is running for Florida House Rep 78. She is a mom, a small business owner, a teacher, and a not-for-profit leader, among many other things. She also likes sports, including boxing. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. She will be on the ballot in November as there is no Democratic primary. And we are going to welcome her now. Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we want to welcome you, and I want to give you a minute more, to tell us a bit more about yourself, because you have a lot of experience and history in this area. So please take it away.
Yes. So hi, I am Dr. Cindy Banyai. I'm running for the House District 78, which kind of covers Fort Myers City and almost anything else that's called Fort Myers. And I have run for office before. You may have seen me in previous elections. I ran against Byron Donalds in 2020 and 2022. And then last cycle, I ran for Fort Myers City Council. And that was the closest race where I came within 77 votes of flipping that seat from the incumbent, Lucien Bochette. And I've been a longtime community advocate, working basically with almost every nonprofit organization around town. I'm very excited about seeing people in our community trying to make our community a better place. So I love getting involved with that, and I have, as a better part of my career, was also on faculty at a local university for over a decade in the Department of Political Science and Public Administration. And I have recently forayed more into the political world because it seems as though we needed to have some diversity of thought here, because I believe that's how our democracy works best, when we have conversations and different points of view, and we put it out there and we go to the ballot box and let the voters decide.
Okay. All right. So I'll hit the first one off. I saw you at the Hobnob in Cape Coral, the Hobnob that the Chamber of Commerce put on, and you talked about your no shit agenda, I would say. So no shit in the water, which I think we all understand. And I apologize, folks. There's going to be some language.
I didn't know we could say that.
Oh, you can say it on the, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
my question list just
good.
opened up.
It's all you, Dan. And then, but also no shit in Tallahassee. So can you be a little bit more specific regarding that comment? And I was looking on your page, and you talked about the rampant corruption that steals opportunity from everyday people. So can you give a little more context and information on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I am the no shit candidate. I actually started talking a lot about this in my run for city council when I realized that the most polluted waterway in Fort Myers is running through my daughter's high school at Fort Myers High School. It is the equivalent of raw sewage on almost every single day of the year. Inclusive Water Keepers is a local organization that follows this, so you can back that up with all the science, but it is so bad that it will aerosolize disease, hepatitis A, other respiratory diseases that is coming from the shit in the water. And it was kind of like, why is nobody paying attention to this, right? As it's running through Edison Park. There are other places around Fort Myers that also have bad water. So it just kind of was something I could hone in on that people resonated with, like who wants their kids to have a shit river through their high school, because this is where the marching band plays and the baseball team. It's all like right there. And I realized the proximity once again my daughter was on the field out there, right? And So I just kind of leaned into it. I think it's like 100% a bipartisan issue. I don't think that there's a single person who thinks that shit in our water is good. Like, I don't, like no one can argue with that, right?
No,
Like,
no. I think everyone gets that. I think I was referring to more your comment about,
the other part of it.
Sorry,
yeah. So it's kind of like the values and the fight that I bring to the issue. So I have a page on my website called the Bold Actions. Those are my actual policies, but this is kind of like, well, what do you get with me? Well, you get the person who's going to go out and tell you about the shit, and it's going to fight back. So specifically when it comes to corruption, we've seen a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in our government, our local government, and our state government. And I think that there's a lot of people that would agree with me that we need to get rid of that. And part of the ways that we get rid of that is making sure that we are shining a light on who is getting donations from who, what kind of corporations or developers, or is it US Sugar, is it Mosaic, who is getting money and who is getting favorable treatment from that. So I think we kind of need an overhaul on our system in a lot of different ways. And so in the Bold Policies plan, my Fair and Free Florida plan, part of that, I have a whole section on ending corruption where I propose that we make a state ombudsman chair, so somebody that is like not appointed necessarily by a particular like one governor or one particular party, but that has is a bit outside of the system, perhaps an elected position even, or something that is otherwise appointed by consensus within the House and the Senate, that we end the pay for play, that we have transparency in contracting, and that includes some contractors, so that we are aware and can fight back against when local officials are getting contracts from areas in their jurisdiction or nearby, which is something that happens here in Lee County quite a bit. So those are some of the things that I really wanted to focus on. And related to the environment.
Cindy, you made a claim there. Give an example. What examples could you give in Lee County that elected officials are getting contracts because of their position?
So I think it's no secret that David Mullica runs Haunch Marina and Haunch Demolition, and Haunch Demolition is one of the largest developer construction organizations, definitely the largest demolition organization in our area. They routinely get public contracts. Most recently, they have the City of Palms demolition. They did the Housing Authority of Fort Myers. Now, those are both in Fort Myers, but Fort Myers is in Lee County. So there's a gray line that comes in with this type of corruption, right? So it's not like there was anything sneaky in the process, right? It was out there, and a lot of people go, oh, well, it was a low bid. Okay, well, it's easy to low bid when you're the biggest one in town. Also, when you have that kind of outsized influence, it is a conflict of interest for you to even be bidding on something where you have influence over your fellow public servants. And that's a problem. I mean, there is even evidence to which David Mullica has talked about himself, where he was getting a subcontractor role through the community development block grant, the disaster relief fund, the $1.1 billion, that was not clear because he was put in as a subcontractor, and it was contracted through two different pass-through organizations. So the public doesn't necessarily know that it was his organization that was receiving the funds from the disaster relief.
So if the public doesn't know, how did you find out?
First of all, he told people that he knew that the disaster relief fund was being spent because he was getting money from it. And this is what he had told a disaster relief survivor. There's an association, the Disaster Relief Association of Fort Myers, that was started after Hurricane Ian. And a lot of those folks had trouble accessing some of the funds, but the powers that be from the county and the other agencies were able to kind of manipulate and get different projects done for themselves, and leaving a lot of the regular folks behind. So this was something that he had told folks, and I had done actually quite a bit of digging to see the different agencies that were getting the pass-throughs, and that he was one of the subcontractors underneath those organizations. So it was not clear, and he was not an approved vendor by the county.
Now
go ahead, Kim.
No, do you want to, if you have a follow-up on that, I was just going to flip to something, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, if you're alleging this, why aren't you bringing it forward? And two, what would you do if you're elected in Tallahassee to stop it?
Well, first of all, there's the contractor transparency is one of the proposals I have in the ending pay for play, and also to straight out make it illegal for anybody that has a public office. So whether you are in Congress or a state representative, or if you are a city council member or county commission, if you have a business that you cannot get a public contract in the area under your jurisdiction. So, right, like anybody that's in that area, you cannot get a public contract there because it's too big of a conflict of interest.
Now you're talking locally, but you're going to be up in Tallahassee if elected.
Right.
So what's going on up there that you object to? What do you see up there that's the rampant corruption? Using your words.
Yeah, of course. No, so that's part of it. The nepotism is another thing that I've really been very dismayed with. It's just a system, a patronage system. I mean, this is what I studied in the Philippines for my doctorate, right? Like, I was so shocked to move back to Florida after doing my doctorate work in Japan and studying local government systems and knowing how corrupt the Philippines was, is to see almost the exact same thing here in Florida. And really, it's these networks. So it's, somebody's in power and then their sister gets a contract, or their daughter, right? A real clear example of this is Kathleen Pasadomo, who was a state senator covering parts of Lee County and Naples and Collier County. Her daughter, like a couple years out of graduating from law school, was appointed to the Public Utilities Commission, having no experience in public utilities at all, barely any work experience at all. Ron DeSantis appointed her to that, and in turn, she greenlit almost anything that Ron DeSantis had. We also had another good example of that in our very own Jenna Persons-Mullica, as she was appointed to the Supervisors of Elections position, and that was in return for her co-sponsoring the congressional redistricting map, co-sponsoring the Florida Save Act, and doing things that pushed the DeSantis specific agenda. And then he turned around and gave her something that her and her family had been advocating for. So it's that kind of patronage network, that kind of nepotism nonsense that I think we're all tired of. We're all tired of that.
So when and if you're up there, what are you going to do to change? Just tell everybody, look, you can't, nobody can have any friends. Nobody can have any business.
I'm going to fight them. I'm kidding.
Nobody's doing anything. I mean, what is your answer to that? I mean, who's going to be in that position to make those decisions if not those people?
Well, right now we have power that's consolidated behind the governor, and that is bad, right? Like, to have so much power in one part, not even just separated between the House and the Senate, but within the governor himself. And actually, you can see that how the governor's agenda, even amongst Republicans, he only allows things to come to the floor, and has only allowed over the past several years when he's been in charge, only things that are part of his agenda, even if other Republicans are putting them in. And it's actually kind of part of the Trump DeSantis push back and forth, right? DeSantis really has lock on the legislature because you can't do anything without his approval. So one of the things that I propose that we do is remove some of those appointments from the governor altogether and make them go through the state legislature entirely, Senate and the House. So there is a process where the Senate approves what the governor does. Again, it's just a rubber stamp at this point, but let's make that process a little bit more robust. Let's involve more people so that you don't have one person hoarding a lot of power themselves.
Okay.
So one of the things you talk about on your website is returning the home rule, and you say your voice. What are some things that you think Tallahassee has done over the last couple of years that is taking away home rule, and what would you do to change it?
Yeah, let me start by explaining for folks who may be listening what home rule is, because that's like a super wonky term. Basically, it's the idea that the best form of government is the one that's closest to the people, right? So we have a system in the state of Florida where our municipalities are counties are supposed to be the ones that are in charge of making rules that specifically affect people in those areas, right? And you have your direct representation there as well, and you have a lot of contact with the people. But over the years, there has been a power consolidation in Tallahassee, stripping home rule away. Some of the most like, I don't know, egregious is not even the right word I'm looking for, but like the biggest answers to that are things like the straws, right? So remember a couple years, everybody, all the environmentalists were like super worried about straws and the turtles, and a bunch of the areas on the beaches, they banned straws in the municipality, and that's how we ended up with those really stupid paper straws, right? You guys remember that era?
So the beach knows about straws and turtles, I'm sure.
But
yeah, we've been through that once or twice.
So that was one of the examples of the home rule, the preemptions that were passed in Tallahassee. Okay. And I talk about it because it's like, I don't know, I feel like even as an environmentalist, we can all agree that like the straws were just a really, man, that was a dumb thing. And we all hate the paper straws equally, right? Like, but there was a similar thing with sunscreen in Key West. There was a similar thing with plastic bags, banning plastic bags, especially in coastal areas, which cause a lot of problems for beach communities. And then there was a big one where people targeted backlash came to Spencer Roach about the cruise ships in Key West again. And tell me why Spencer Roach, who was a representative over here, was championing the cruise lines as Key West put a moratorium on cruise lines coming into their ports because it was destroying their coral reef. Well, Spencer Roach went to Tallahassee, passed a rule that said, hey, no one can make this kind of ban for cruise ships. And so, now they have to have it there. It goes even further when it comes to development. There was a few things the past few years that really stripped localities of their ability to have control over the types of development they have. Tiffany Esposito passed and was a sponsor of a bill that basically said if you don't pass by the local area within 30 days or something like that, then it automatically is approved. This bill was highly controversial because it was actually written by development lobbyists, whom are also her campaign managers under the Terry Miller Ballot Partners connection. Okay, so that and she denied, oh, it's not, I wrote it, my staff wrote it. But like, if you go all the way back into the metadata, you can see that it was originally written by the development lobbyist. And so obviously that's not something that is beneficial to our community. And if you think of the area that Tiffany Esposito is representative for, that's East Lee County. There is a huge movement there against overdevelopment. So why would their representative be so eager to greenlight unbridled development in that community, except for corruption? So the corruption and the home rule issue are kind of like connected as well.
So let me ask you, what is your stance? What are your feelings, opinions on the Live Local Act, on Live Local developments?
Yeah, so that's one that I think is beneficial. But again, I think it has too much sway for towards the developers as well. So
you don't think that in a way is trying to claw back some home rule to not allow municipalities to, that it seems to say home rule here, and then that feels like for those communities.
But the Live Local Act was passed prior to the bill that I just described from Tiffany Esposito. So there's been subsequent rollbacks of home rule even since the Live Local Act was passed. Now, I do know that I'm been a long time environmentalist. I'm endorsed by the Democratic Environmental Caucus, and especially on the water issue, they were very 50-50 and somewhat supportive of the Live Local Act. But since then, there's been additional rollbacks. So we can't just say that there's one piece of legislation and that fixes everything, while we're still seeing attacks on home rule continue in Tallahassee.
When you say rollback means you bring things back, right? What have you seen from the Live Local Act and legislation from Tallahassee that's rolled that back since it was passed a few years ago?
Well, I mean, if we don't have the ability to control where our development goes, because now we have a state law that says if it's not done in a certain time frame, that the local, it just gets approved anyway, that significantly reduces our local control. Right?
I don't know that I guess I wouldn't consider that a rollback. I'm just trying to understand. To me, what a rollback would be maybe we gave too much stuff to the developers and we need to bring some of that back in. But current legislation in Tallahassee over the last 3 years has amended it to strengthen the side for developers to be able to build outside of the local home rule. So I'm struggling to understand what you mean by rollback. I don't know that anything's rolled back. It's strengthened the side of the developer.
Yeah, I think we're actually agreeing, because what I'm saying is home rule has been rolled back. The availability of home rule. That's what she was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, now I understand.
Yeah, I wasn't clear either, because okay. So
home rule is being rolled back. That's what I'm concerned about. Because I like the other part of that, by the way, is we are looking at, and this is like really like, I'll put on my scholar hat for this, okay? The reason that patronage networks are bad, the reason that rolling back these simple forms of our democratic representativeness, our republicness, right? If you want to put it like that, is that we are facing the potential of having our local officials be nothing more than essentially conduits for their own ladder climbing and rubber stamps for Tallahassee and whomever is the governor. Okay. And I think that, again, both sides of the aisle, we can agree that that's not a good idea. We want to have robust local institutions with independent thought and the ability to elect officials to those local institutions that will do things in response to what the people in that community want. So I'm afraid of those folks just becoming stuffed suits, and then just waiting for their turn. So they'll go get elected to the county commission, bide their time, take their nice salary until somebody calls them up and says, hey, why don't you become a state senator? Or why don't you run for Congress? And then we're just going to pump you full of this money and you just keep doing what we tell you to do. I mean, we're pretty close to that system now, but at least for the most part, with the home rule being the priority across the state of Florida, we do still have some ability to maneuver to preserve that. And I think that we should. I want our municipalities to have that power. And I think everybody can agree that that's why we have them in the first place.
I think since we're still on Live Local, I think then Senate President Pasadoma had great intentions, right? I think there were some unintended consequences there, dealing with what she was trying to achieve. And we're starting to see that. So if you're elected, what would you do? Give me an example of what you could do to go and pull back some of those things. Or would you? Or do you think you'd have the support to be able to do it?
Well, that's a whole other issue in terms of like what the composition of the state house and the state senate is going to look like. But I would advocate, I think that my best answer is to advocate for this decoupling of the money and the development push. I would definitely roll back the bill that Tiffany Esposito had passed. I would try as much as possible to put the power back into the hands of the local governments when it came to determining what gets built where and by whom.
You've talked pretty much about almost everyone in the delegation. I think you've only left out two.
Mike Giambarlo and Montana.
And Senator Martin. I mean, I'm assuming you probably don't like some of the things that they've done. Do you have anything good to say about anything this delegation has done?
I think there's a lot of things that I disagree with that have happened in the state of Florida, particularly in the last, 5-10 years. Jonathan Martin was pushing a whole bunch of Confederate monuments, which is really ridiculous because Lee County was the furthest south battle in the Civil War, and it was a Union fort, and then the Union won. So the fact that we're even talking about building Confederate monuments here when there were no Confederate victories is like kind of a ridiculous thing to me. And I'm not saying, and let me be clear, because I think that and I saw some of the comments of people, when we were advertising this show, we get really caught up in politics as if it's personal. Okay. It's not personal, especially for me. I've been a policy wonk, since I'm a kid. I got an undergraduate, a master's, a doctorate. I love that stuff. I recognize how politics are, which is why I have the No Shit campaign, because sometimes we have to get people involved so I can talk to them about the other wonky stuff and like things about that are important, like about home rule. I don't think that there's anybody that's in our delegation that is doing it with ill intent. I really don't. I do believe that some folks are looking at their next climb up, right? I do think some people selected campaign managers who they know were going to help them be successful, but they knew what the price tag was, and the price tag was selling out to developers. And you have to know how the game is played, and I do think a lot of them know that.
So we've talked a lot about that. I just want to bring it back. Let's go through some of the issues too. We touched on, well, maybe we did, affordable housing in terms of, that's a big thing. There is, everybody knows. I mean, you hear it all over the place. A lot of people cannot afford rent. They not afford to buy a new home. I'm seeing at least some new things come up. Like there was one in North Fort Myers for over 55. Hermosa, I believe, is a new income-based housing, and they're building one up right by where I live, the Wave. So starting to see things come up. What are you going to do? What is your plan to bring more affordable housing to this area?
So that's a difficult question, as you know. We have had a lot of development here, and interestingly enough, rents have gone down a little bit. Our housing market is also been a bit soft for a lot of other reasons. Some of it is fraud, some of it is just a glut in the market. But we've got a lot of multi-unit housing going up, and I think the problem with that has always been that those multi-units are being built, and they're being built really quickly, but they're being priced really high. They're being sold as luxury units, right? So they start at $2,100 a month. I remember, because I personally got caught up in the housing crisis. The most recent one is like everything was like jacking up. That's when I lost my house in the divorce, right? Like, so I had to find a place for me and my 3 kids and my cats and, all that kind of stuff. And it was really difficult because I had to move far away. I ended up in Lehigh at one point, and I was still paying like $2,600 way out in Lehigh. And so I remember one of those housing units being built right across from the jail, the county jail over there on Ortiz. Mm-hmm. And it's got like some name that's like, Vista View or something. And the view is the jail. Okay. That one started like over $2,000 a month. And if your view is the jail and you're being charged over $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment, like that is crazy town. Okay. So things that I am looking at are a couple fold. So one of them is making sure that the Sadowski Fund at the state level is fully funded and actually used for affordable housing. And that means to help subsidize housing and development in areas where it is affordable for folks according to the area median income, the AMI. So, available and within a sustainable level, which is typically 25% of the area median income is what those would be priced at. And that's a state level program and incentive that could work to help to ensure specifically our workforce, knowing that lots of our workforce is working in these lower income jobs because that's where our biggest job growth is in things like retail, restaurants, hospitality, things like that. Making sure that those folks can live closer to home. The other part of it has to do with zoning and how we do zoning. Now, zoning is a county and city level thing, but from the state level, we can help local municipalities understand about ways that you can have more compact zoning, because one of the things that is really bad for our tax base and for our long-term infrastructure investment is the sprawl that we've been seeing. So when you build further out from the city, you have to build that infrastructure first, and it actually loses value at a higher rate than infill in the city. So if helping communities understand that by removing barriers to things like smaller homes, mixed use commercial and residential areas, which we've seen a lot of growth in our area, but encouraging that infill from the state level is something that I'm very interested in doing.
That was a lot of words. I don't know that I heard anything that you would actually do though. I'm trying to understand. I mean,
Well,
you know,
first of all, like the Sadowski fund is routinely robbed. So we don't put the funds in. That means the municipalities don't get the money for the affordable housing program. So that means funding the Sadowski program and then using those funds for affordable housing. That is the best way, because there are great programs, just like you had mentioned, that could benefit from additional funds from the state that are meant for affordable housing.
well, what other programs would you put in place to increase? Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, what other programs could you come up with, or what other programs would you put in place to help elevate the funding that goes into that fund?
So those are actually local programs, right? The state level cannot do that. That's why we have the Sadowski fund at the state level. The state level provides the funding for affordable housing. It's the local areas that provide the programs for those affordable housing. The only other thing that the state can do related to this, as I was talking, was the zoning. So we can encourage different levels of zoning. So we can put the money or put portions of the money to be attached to infill, mixed use, as opposed to sprawl, right? Because that is the biggest risk I see right now to some of the quote unquote affordable housing that is being developed even in the private sector, is that it's getting further and further away from our city center in Fort Myers in particular, and our job center.
So you think it's zoning and not, I mean, so is there space available to do this, to go up and out? I mean, not out, but go up.
Yeah, absolutely, there is. We have several redevelopment areas. In fact, Midtown in Fort Myers is one of them, even though Fort Myers is municipality, right? But that area is looking at having more infill development. It's part of the reason why they've decided to mow down the city of Palms Park, because there's some desire to put some additional housing in there. But the plan right now is not for affordable housing, right? So part of it is making sure that there is participation at the local level, and there are incentives built in that we can do through the Sadowski fund to ensure that affordable housing is part of any of those redevelopment projects as well.
Okay. Dan, anything else on that?
No, I think I mean,
beat that one down.
Yeah. One of the things that you have on your website is that you want to push to raise the minimum wage to $22 an hour. Do you think that would have an impact on small businesses?
Yeah, I think a lot of small businesses are already paying pretty competitive wages as it is. Typically in our area, that we have kind of like two choices for work. The majority of our businesses themselves are micro businesses. So we're talking like 20 or less employees. And then we have the big guys, right? And the big guys, mostly government. Lee Health, which is quasi-government. I know it's being privatized at this point. The school district, Lee County, and then you get into Walmart and stuff like that as you go down. So you have a trade-off usually. So there's stability in the bigger guys, but local people, smaller businesses, they often have to pay more competitive wages because they don't have additional things like benefits and things like that. I think that it is necessary for us to raise the minimum wage, because the living wage necessary for the cost of living in this area for a family with 2 incomes and 2 children is actually over $23 an hour. So the $22 proposal is a modest proposal just so people can live. So if you think about this in terms of what the broad impact is, people are required to have a minimum wage. Yes, there will be less jobs, but we will have jobs that can actually get people closer to a standard of living instead of having multiple jobs that pay less. And a lot of times they are put under a 20-hour, so people are working 2 part-time jobs to make up, and they're still getting a poor wage. So there will be some restructuring that will have to happen. But we're already seeing that with AI. We're already seeing that with various changes. So why not value people's time, and then also increase our ability for people to be self-sufficient, right? And get off the government dollar, right? We have a lot of folks who are also working at low wage and minimum wage jobs who still qualify for SNAP and Medicaid and Medicare, right? So we can get some of those folks off and ultimately save public dollars if we have people being paid closer to a living wage.
But do you think by doing that and compounding with the rising insurance costs, rents going up for commercial properties, things like that. Now potentially trying to add a higher minimum wage. Are you devaluing, the person that's out there just trying to live the American dream, that's trying to work to support their family? Granted, the people that would be getting benefits of the $22 an hour are trying to support their family. But would you agree that the person that's started the small business, that's paying and taking all this risk, should have equal or at least some say in what they can pay their employees?
So they have to value their employees. And if it's a cost between brick and mortar and all this other kind of stuff and insurance, well, we live in a digital era, right? Actually, it'll probably end up reducing their cost because you can't get commercial insurance for a lot of buildings these days. So why not go virtual? Now is the time, right? I think that this argument that it's going to be crushing for small businesses has not actually played out in reality in terms of other places around the country where they have raised minimum wage. California is about to raise it to $17. You see market fluctuations. And even here in the state of Florida, we passed a referendum in 2016, right? And we've moved minimum wage up to $15 an hour, where everybody was saying that this was going to cause massive amounts of, small businesses to close. But have we seen that? The answer is no.
So I hear what you're saying about the small business, and you brought up some of the bigger things like the school district. I am trying to wrap my head around, and raising to $22 an hour, and the school district does not pay, like, for example, paraprofessionals that wage, not anywhere near that. And yet they're facing budgetary issues on pretty high. So what's going to happen there? I mean, what is that going to do to the school district you can launch into the education vouchers, which are playing into that, but your plan how are you going to square that?
Well, first of all, I think we can eliminate a couple of the lobbying contracts that the state has, because it really hasn't benefited our county school district in any way, shape, or form. So let's get rid of a couple of those, and then let's start taking away jobs at the top, okay? Because we simply have so much glut in terms of the administration and the administrative budgets. We do not need to have multiple department heads and multiple people making six figures a year in this district. What we need is teachers in classrooms, paraprofessionals in classrooms, okay? I think that that's where we start. And honestly, that's my same answer for higher ed as well. We've seen over the last 2 decades just an exponential growth in the number and the pay of administration at the top of these educational organizations, and we just simply don't need it. I would rather us pay a paraprofessional $22 an hour than pay another vice president of something or another who, as we've seen in our school district, oftentimes comes at the hands of crony politics and patronage politics. This is what we had when Denise Carlin came in. She was hiring folks from her campaign manager's staff, okay, to work in the school district. And we don't need that kind of crony politics and corruption, frankly, when it comes to our kids.
Do you think, though, that raising the minimum wage is going to get them to lop off the top?
We can only hope.
Okay.
And we can advocate, and there are certainly people that are advocating. And it also is a matter of, are you going to elect school board officials who are working with those same crony politicians, right? Because there are people that are running that have Terry Miller from Ballard Partners as their campaign manager right now. And as soon as Denise Carlin was, elected in on that, they hired in a whole bunch of people from their staff in there, and they gave his company an additional consulting contract for lobbying. So, you don't get much more apparent corruption than that.
Sounds like you think that there's some waste in the school district. Do you support the Amendment 3, and do you think that the school district should have been part of that?
That's a tough one, because listen, I know everybody wants a tax break. Okay, I certainly do. I'm actually worried about the other public services that we have, because it is one of the only ways that we raise funds around our local services. And this is everything from things that we already have a problem with, like our water purification, our infrastructure, our police, our Parks and Rec. I am worried about those being cut off if this passes. So I think that there's another way that we can give Floridians a tax break that they deserve, that's equitable as well, right? Because we actually are in a state where the majority of people who live here are renters. So if we're only giving property homestead tax exemptions, we're leaving over 60% of the people in the state of Florida without that benefit. So let's do something for all Florida residents, and that's why I am proposing a summer sales tax holiday for Florida residents. I think that will help folks through those lean times of the year. We have season that's done, but that everybody who's living here, they all get to benefit from it, and it will be based on their own consumption. So everybody will save some during those lean months, and I think that is a much better way to help with the affordability crisis here than the property tax exemption.
So sales tax break for how long? For how long?
I would say June, July, and August.
Okay.
So you never answered the question. Do you think the school district should be part of this referendum?
No, I don't. I actually think that we need to, as we talked about the vouchers, I think that we need to rein in the vouchers. We need to bring those dollars back to the school district. At the very least, I would actually like to repeal the entire universal voucher program myself. I know that's not feasible right now, but at the very least, we need oversight. So when dollars are going to the students, they need to be going to an institution that has the same standards as the rest of the state of Florida. Because unfortunately, there's a heck of a lot of fly-by-night private schools, charter schools that are popping up all over the state, and they're bilking parents out of their money. We had one right here in South Fort Myers, right? 300 students were left 2 years ago without anything, in terms of that, they were ready to go and it never opened. What happened though is that those students then have to be reabsorbed back in the school district. And the problem is if they go to a school and that school fails them for whatever reason, and they come back into that school district, that money does not follow them back. So that's something that we also have to talk about in terms of those voucher dollars. If they go with a student to a place, they come back to the university or to the school district, the money has to come back to the school district.
What do you say to those parents who feel they're not getting served well by the school district? And you yourself were just saying about, the management of the money that they do now. So, I mean,
I know. Listen, for me, it feels like this is part of the plan, right? There are people that want to profit off this. Erica Donalds is one of them, right? This is Byron Donalds' wife, our current congressman, running for governor right now. She has an organization that sets up charter schools around the state of Florida, and she gets an 11% in perpetuity cut of that. She's not the only one. There are plenty of people who are looking to cash in on this because it is a big pile of money because we have a lot of kids. So I would like to see that part taken back and then reinvested into our schools. I also think that we need to look at the budget overall in the state of Florida when it comes to funding the schools, because one of the things that had happened with the Florida lottery money, right, was that we were all promised that was going to be a benefit, right, to the students. But what happened is that money came in and that amount of money was scooped out of the budget, right? So what I'm saying is let's take that Florida lottery money and put it back in, okay? So that is now the bonus that it was supposed to be. And then we have the budget the way that it was. So it remains as promised to the Florida people as a benefit for the students and an extra instead of supplementing the budget. I think that will go a long way for some of the problems that we have, right? We won't have crowded schools. We will be able to build new schools. We will be able to pay teachers and paraprofessionals what they are worth if we actually budget and have the budgets and are not giving in to people who are trying to profit off of our public education system.
So are you
Cindy,
a no on charter schools? Are you a no on charter schools?
I'm a no on private charter schools. I know that there are a lot of organizations, some nonprofits, and even the city of Cape Coral, for instance, have charter schools. I think that those can be very beneficial public-private partnerships if done correctly, but they should be the exception, right? I think a good example of this we have is with the Family Initiative. And that, there we go. There is something that I believe was good that one of my predecessors had done was help to support and build the programs around Family Initiative that helps students and young people with autism spectrum disorders. that is clearly a specialized area with a certain need, and there's a demand for it. And that kind of program and having that ability for parents, with a child like that, to be able to send them to a charter school can be a benefit. So I'm not, 100% on like, no, never under any circumstance, but let's make it like, hey, there's got to be a reason that you want to do this. And it can't just be because you want to make money on a charter school.
So how do you square, Cindy, that with the school district budgets are going up, they're not going down because ad valorem goes up, so their budgets go up. So how do you square with increasing budgets, declining by all intents and purposes, declining enrollment in public schools with an increase in charter and private schools? There wouldn't be a need to do that. What do you say to the parents who are making the choice to go to a charter school for one reason or another? You're telling them that you don't believe in their decision as a parent to go to a charter school. Why do you think there's a need for charter schools if the public schools are doing such a great job? There wouldn't be, what you're claiming
There's
about
not a need.
Byron Donald's wife is true or not. What it only happens because there's a need there, right? It's a supply and demand.
It's not. No, 70% of the vouchers have gone to people who already had their children enrolled in a private or charter school. Okay. So when they expanded to the universal voucher system here in the state of Florida, it didn't suddenly make a whole bunch of people decide that they didn't want to be part of the school system. It just made some people who are already doing it able to subsidize their choice of a private school. That's what I have a problem with. This is also, manifest destiny to a certain extent. Okay. If you defund the public schools and you give an option and then you tell parents, hey, you can have this pile of money, you're mad, because I'll tell you what, there are Republicans and Democrats, non-affiliated people all across the board that are mad at the school for one reason or another. Okay. This is not a partisan issue, but if you allow that erosion to happen, and instead of trying to make the schools better, if you just say, great, you can send your kid to another school and there's no standards there, but whatever, then we all lose in the long run. And I'll make this pitch right now too, because this is beyond just what individual parents want and need. This is also a workforce issue that we should be very cognizant of. As we defund our public schools, we are defunding our workforce. We are making our workforce less educated. You know what that means? That means that we will not have the people that we need to hire if we have any sort of high-tech jobs, anything above hospitality and retail. Okay, so if we want to have good businesses and strong workers, we need the education system to be a part of that pipeline. And we don't do that through defunding those public schools and sending it to private school kids who are already there.
So how do you then get the schools, districts, whatever, to do a better job?
So part of it is, again, giving them the funds that they need, building the schools that they need, and the areas that they need, right? East Lee County, let's actually build in Lehigh, not Elva, where the community was against it and they don't have the numbers, okay? Let's actually get kids out of portables, right? Let's have enough teachers. Let's actually give the teachers that they support, instead of, cutting, what did they cut? 435 jobs at the end of last year, right? I was talking to my daughter's PE teacher from last year, and he was telling me that one of the reasons he wants to quit is because not only do they take the counselor away, because she's gone, okay, their entire first grade quit, and he wants to quit because everybody sends the bad kids to him. That's not his job. He's a PE teacher, but there's nowhere else to go. And that is a personnel issue. And so again, we have the deficit and blah, 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 but we have lobbying contracts and we have people making a lot of money. So let's put the money where we need to, which is in the support staff and in the teachers and in the buildings. And then we'll see a lot better teachers and we'll see more parents and kids wanting to stay in the public schools instead of being driven away, which is part of the point of the people that want to defund our public schools and make money off charter schools.
Well, I don't think anyone would disagree with paying teachers more and paying paras more and paying your frontline people more. I think giving an institution more money that isn't being good stewards of it is not going to result in that money getting to those people. So I guess that's the question is.
So you're asking a philosophical question, actually. But here's the thing. So like in any times. Okay. So our instinct as humans is austerity, right? It's like we want to be like, oh, that's not working. We're going to take the money away. Right. And that feels good because we're like punishing people who aren't doing a good job. However, when it comes to governance, when it comes to public systems, that's not what you need to do. What you need to do is fix the people in the job, right? You need to elect different people. You need to hire different people. You need a different approach. You need somebody to come in and fix the problems in your system. And that may mean taking money away from certain things. Absolutely. But if you starve a system and just say, look, you're broken, forget you, we're never going to fix it. And this is like seriously coming from my heart, is where I spent a lot of my career as an efficiency and effectiveness expert, as an evaluator. Okay. I work with nonprofits in this area and all over the world. And it is something that we should be doing more of. We should be doing more evaluations in our schools, and not like these things where we're putting the kids through hoops like we have been. I'm talking about, what is our goal? What are we trying to do? Are we really trying to, reach a certain level? Are we trying to graduate more kids? We have a lot of data manipulation in this state that breaks my heart. Okay. I want to see that data used to improve our systems and make them more efficient and effective. So it's not necessarily just throwing good money after bad. It's taking this money and saying, okay, you didn't meet your goals. We got to fix something. Right. And then electing the right people to do it.
Cindy, I have a hard time putting the word starve in the same sentence as a $2.5+ billion budget. I mean, that seems very difficult for me to put those two things together. But I'll get close to wrap up here. This is how do you reach out to the people? How do you get to the people? This is your fourth attempt at running for one office or another. How do you get to them, or how do you talk to them and convince them that this is the time? Whereas maybe they didn't vote for you the last time. Why should they vote for you this time and for this position?
Well, I think that there's a lot of different issues. Like I said, I don't think we may have disagreed on some of the different angles that we would take here, but there was a lot of agreement that we have, right? Like, we want to cut the waste in the schools. We want clean water. I think that at the local level in particular, we can come together around things that we want. We all dislike corruption too, right? So it's a matter of talking to folks about what it is that they get with me. And I know I saw the comments. People were like, oh, she's crazy. I'm like, I am not. I'm actually super boring, right? I'm a boring wonk. And so if you want me to explain to you why it is that I have a certain position, I will absolutely do that. Unfortunately, we live in this, 2-second attention span world, which is why I have the no shit program. So I'm trying to reel them in with the idea of like, hey, aren't you tired of all this shit? And then hopefully they can hear some of the other stuff. Other than that, I'm doing calls and door knocking and emails, my social media platforms. I have a weekly show Tuesdays at noon on Instagram. Thursday night, I'm coming up at 1 at 7 p.m. on TikTok. I film from my toilet because that's Shit Talk Live. People keep asking me about that as well. I'm like, that's where the shit goes, in the toilet. So that's where I film it from. Trying to be a bit, yeah, okay. So I'm trying to get some attention on that, because otherwise I can't be Professor Cindy 24/7. People don't want to listen to it. But I'm hoping that, especially looking at let's get the corruption out, bring the dollars back to where it matters, that I can reach people in a different way, and that they'll send me to be their fighter in Tallahassee.
Well, I don't know that I'm going to be, if I'm being honest, I don't know if I'm tuning into any podcast from someone on their toilet. Just doesn't seem like that's something I'm going to be into. But, you're a boxing fan. Who's your favorite boxer?
I really like Manny Pacquiao. I like Sugar Ray Leonard. I love boxing as a sport. And by the way, fun fact, do you guys know that the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame is right here in Fort Myers? You can go see it at SJC.
I
did not know that.
Yes. SJC Boxing is right across from the Edison Mall. Basically any evening from 6 to 8 p.m. There's students, there's people in there training, and the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame display is there. One of the things that I want to bring in terms of enrichment in our community is to help to provide some funding and support, both for the youth mentoring program that we run out of SJC Boxing, but also to have the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame with all its amazing stories of these gritty fighters and people who have, affected our lives for decades, and have a world-class exhibit here in Fort Myers. It's something I think can help to put us on the map with another group of folks, right? Boxing folks aren't the same people necessarily that go to the Edison Estates, right? No disrespect to the Edison Estates. My husband works there, but let's give the boxing fans something fun too. And I'm also a Florida boxing judge, so I like getting in there and seeing it.
So
and being
who would you like to get in the ring?
Are you saying like who do I want to punch, or?
I mean, who would you like to go, toe to toe with? Who would you?
Dan Bongino, because he's the only person that blocked me on Twitter because I kept selling that I got more votes than him in CD19. I don't know. I really am don't want to fight people. But well,
it's a sport. I mean, yeah. I didn't say who you wanted to take out in the street fight.
I would love a chance to fight Clarissa Shields, but I need to be about 20 years younger to be able to get that title back.
All right. Well, did we miss anything else before we let you go?
Well, if you haven't, before we move on from the boxing, if you haven't ever heard of Ricky Hatton, he was one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, what did you like about him?
He fought everybody. He didn't care who you were. He was a tough kid. That if you go look at his fights, he had a ton of fights, and he fought anybody that wanted to come and fight him. He didn't fear anybody, and then he would go have a pint.
There you go. That's what it's all about, right? And I feel like that's like politics too. Right? Like you duke it out, and I more than anything in my heart of hearts want us all to get back to the days where we're talking about the best way to do something, right? In politics, instead of being angry at somebody else because they're a different party or they like a different candidate than me, right? That is actually my true hope of moving forward in unity with all of this. We can just and I can go back to being my wonky self where we're just talking about policies and stuff like that. So I do hope, and I see a future for us if we can get some of this corruption taken care of here in our state.
All right. Anything else? Did we cover everything in the last 2 minutes?
NoShitFlorida.com. That's my website.
Okay. All right.
And if you want to have a conversation, I would love to come talk to your club. If you want to, probably not get in the ring, but if you want, I'll take you to the gym. But otherwise,
Are you talking to me, or are you talking to just everybody out there?
Out in TV land, wherever we are. But I'm
that
saying
would be a pay-per-view, I think, Kim. That would be a pay-per-view.
I know. I was thinking, I was punch a politician would be a really good fundraiser. But I would love to talk with folks if they want to help or volunteer the campaign. Or donate, all of that kind of stuff too. I am taking no corporate dollars, no corporate packed out, no special interests. I'm 100% grassroots. I'm just here working for the people and to make the community a good place for my kids and yours.
Well, thanks for joining us, Cindy.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. Great conversation.
All right. That was Cindy Banyai. We will end it here, and you will get the full A-team back next week. So take care, everybody. Bye.